Coming soon to a podcatcher near you, the Gatecrashers, brothers Dan and Jake McMahon, face longtime partners Mikey Z and Hangman Charlie Davis to prove once and for all who is the better team. One can't help but wonder if there's something more personal at stake. Even before All Gatecrashers podcasting came into existence, the Elite was a close-knit group of talented speakers and storytellers who came from humble beginnings as independent content creators to build a passionate online fan base.
The McMahons, Mikey, Z, and Charlie Davis. I mean, what's not to say? They formed a bond, a brotherhood over the years. You know, they did everything together. They've been on each other's podcasts and Twitch streams, worked together on social media promotion and ideas, really built something together. But we've seen that bond start to fray.
We were all good friends. We shared and promoted each other's work. You know, I even did an intro for Mikey, Hangman Charlie, and Dan's tabletop game. I was Spot. That was great.
We had a group chat with Charlie and Mikey, you know, the Elite group chat. That's how the Elite kind of worked out. We hung out, had the same interests, and, you know, even more than that, we were kind of like a family.
It was lightning in a bottle.
One day, we were just talking after a long tabletop session, and kind of as a joke, we said, let's make a list of our Elite podcasters, you know, like the top 10 podcasters in the world, the people we want to be someday. So we'd have like Jay Editon, Miles Stokes, you know, people that really bring it each and every time they get on the mic. But then, of course, we'd always put ourselves on top of that list. And then we'd compare. It was always the thing we'd just do.
So we decided to do this story. You know, we stole the show when everyone else left, and all four of us got up there and did a pose. So I got an art commission of the event, posted it on Twitter, the Elite of the podcasting world. And that was the start of all of this. We went into business for ourselves that day.
Best known for their prowess as singles podcast guests and solo Twitch streamers, when Charlie and Mikey entered the tag team division, how they would perform together remained uncertain.
Somehow, inexplicably, Mikey and Charlie have found a way to coexist as a podcast tag team, and nobody is more surprised than I am.
They are two of the greatest singles podcasters in the world. They've been on all these shows. You know, it's an old adage, but it's true. In order to be a great duo, you first have to be great by yourself. And Charlie and Mikey really are that. Didn't surprise me at all when they won the tag team championship. The winners of this match and new AGP Tag Team Champions, Mikey Z and Hangman Charlie Davis.
This is the last thing I would have seen. I never would have imagined these two being the tag team champs.
I mean, I'm gonna need a drink for this.
Hey, they're great single podcasters, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that when I thought about the greatest podcasters in the world. Maybe it would be us at the top of the mountain. But you know, I'm proud of these guys, Charlie and Mikey. They're my best friends, and I applaud them.
Well, thanks for that, guys. You know, I really appreciate that. I just want to get out there and put on a good show. Just leave it out there. You know, really do everything I can, because at the end of the day, that's what podcasting is all about, right? It's not about winning, losing.
But we are gonna win. You can bet your asses on that one.
Are you sure about that, Hangman?
Damn sure.
You know, I wasn't going to say I'm the best in the world. I was trying to be humble, but maybe I should just be honest.
Mikey?
Maybe I should be, you know? Maybe I should just say it. I am the best. I'm the best bout machine, baby. Goddamn right I am.
Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is to make all nerdy things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe you'll fall in love with. My name is Charlie, and I use they, them pronouns. And your hostess with the mostest, Dan.
Hey, I'm Dan. I use he, him pronouns. Charlie, I'm so glad to have you.
I know you've had a podcast for like forever now, but I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, both of our podcasts went through some changes. You started a new podcast. What is your podcast called?
So me and my partner Mikey started a podcast called Match Club. It is all about the stories of wrestling. So it is feuds, classic, not classic, anything that's your flavor, ladies, men. One of the best things and my favorite thing about wrestling is the stories. That's why I fell in love with wrestling. So Mikey and I kind of sit down and we take you from start to finish and kind of show you maybe why you'd want to check out wrestling.
Yeah, so, we've spoken many times about wrestling. My relationship with wrestling was just my obsession with Andre the Giant. And like random other superstars like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, mostly because I really enjoy ripping my shirt open. But now we're here to talk about AEW.
Yes.
Would you mind giving a little back-of-the-box blurb about AEW?
Yes, so AEW, maybe you have not heard of them because they are rather new. So my little elevator pitch for AEW would be the most technically proficient athletes on this planet tell extremely emotional stories in the ring for you every week, and they are not hindered by scripts or bad creative or a megalomaniacal 70-year-old man who wants to tie them down in any way, shape, or form. So if you were spurned, have been spurned, continue to be spurned by the World Wrestling Federation, or as we know it now, World Wrestling Entertainment, AEW, baby, for you.
And I completely agree. Actually, I always try to get into wrestling, but it never stuck. But after watching what we're going to talk about today, I was like, oh, wow, I could really be into this. So do you mind giving a little bit of a brief history on wrestling itself and a little bit about AEW? Also, what does AEW stand for?
Okay, I'll start with the last question first. So AEW stands for All Elite Wrestling. The name it'll probably make a little bit more sense as I kind of go over the history before we got to AEW. But as for wrestling itself, I mean, I think what everybody will know, what everybody remembers or thinks about is probably the same stuff you did. So they think about Macho Man, they think about the Hulk Hogan, they think about Andre the Giant, they think about Ric Flair, they think about Dusty Rhodes to a lesser extent, they think about these big, larger than life characters. And that's kind of what wrestling is to them if they don't know anything more. On the other side of that, it's also people like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, those names too, and for a little bit different of a reason, also stick out in people's heads. So what I always tell people about wrestling in the US is it used to be very territory based. So basically, there were little promotions everywhere, and they would, people would belong to their certain territory, and they would wrestle, and then they'd kind of win the championship or do whatever they needed to do, and then they'd move on to another territory, wrestle there. It's kind of a very small, I don't like saying carny type of thing, but that's exactly kind of how it started. It's a very, showy type of thing, kind of how it originated, but it's evolved, past that. It's still got kind of some of those roots, and you can see them sometimes, but wrestling really took off in the 80s with all those names, Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, people like that. I don't want to say it was mainstream, but it was getting there. It got mainstream in the 90s.
Yeah, which one was it? Was it the 30 for 30 with Andre the Giant or the HBO special? But they talked a lot about the territories and how like every wrestler would have, every area would have like their wrestler. And then like Andre the Giant was like traveling around the world into all these different regions as like sometimes the villain, sometimes the hero, and they would just like build him up. And then when he like kind of reached his peak, they moved into the next area. So it was like, for me, it kind of felt in a way like the different comic companies. So like DC, then Marvel, and like they all have their certain thing going on, but there's a different flavor to all of them. Until was it Vince? What's the eldest McMahon?
Well, Vince Senior was the eldest.
Vince Senior.
Was the eldest McMahon, and he was, he worked with all these territories, and on his, like his some of his dying words to his son Vince Jr., who is still alive, was not to break the territories up. Guess what happened? All in the name of making money. So, I mean, the World Wrestling Federation exists. And don't get me wrong, it is a kind of a weirdly wondrous thing. But it kind of came at the expense of like breaking up all of these territories and kind of like changing the way wrestling worked. And then like you kind of had two main pieces of wrestling. You had WCW, so World Championship Wrestling, and then you had the WWF, which is the WWE now. And those two companies went at it for quite a long while, which is important because like in the 90s, when everybody remembers probably a little bit about wrestling, maybe not all of it, but everybody knows The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, it was big. Like, wrestling was in the mainstream. It has never been back there since. But, like, from 1998 to probably 2001, wrestling was, like, in the mainstream. Like, people know those names. Like, like Austin 316. Even if you don't really know Austin 316, like, the catchphrase, you know it, right? Like, that Stone Cold Steve Austin is a badass that drinks beer.
Yeah.
Like... And you, like, even if you never watched any of that, like, I grew up watching it. Like, I loved, like, what they call the Attitude Era. I loved Attitude Era wrestling. Like, when I was 12 years old, I loved Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, I was just infatuated with it when I was a kid. And, like, to the point where, like, I would stay up on school nights because Monday Night Raw was on from like 8 to 10. And I would stay up on school nights when I wasn't supposed to be awake, and I'd have my TV in my room turned down really, really low and my door shut. So my mom couldn't hear me watching TV when I was supposed to be asleep. I was enthralled by it because that was like the height of like everything that was going on. And like during that time, the WWF was like everything was like just going so well for them, and WCW, like, they had started out like in the mid 90s, like they started rocketing to the top, and it was this fight between these two companies, like who could outdo one another. And for competition breeds like some great things. So it was like, okay, what can we do this week that's better than WCW, or vice versa? So like really back and forth, like competition drove like all this cool creative stuff to happen in these two companies. And then finally the WWF it subsumed WCW. Like, everything just started going very poorly for WCW, and Vince bought them. And in 2001, there stopped being another wrestling company, like, in the US. It got eaten by the WWF, and everything that was WCW, like, was, like, brought into that homogenous zone. And from 2001 all the way until 2019, there was no other wrestling company in the US that could, like, really square up to WWE. They can say, hey, we have a product on cable television. Like, we have people watching, like, anything like that. That hasn't happened for 20 years. Until last year, basically, with AEW. So it was kind of a groundbreaking thing that happened.
Yeah, even me, who doesn't, like, I wasn't following any of this, even I had the games as a kid. Like, I knew wrestling. I never was into it. But in the past couple of years, there's been this AEW thing, or maybe, is it a year or two?
It's been about a year, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that whole thing come to be?
Okay, it's a wild story. If you really sit down and think about it. So, and I'm going to talk about Kenny Omega, and I'm going to try not to over talk about Kenny Omega. But Kenny Omega is a wrestler who was primarily known for his work in Japan. So, yeah, there's lots of wrestling in the US that a lot of people know, but Japan has this very long tradition of wrestling. What they have in Japan now, and for quite a while now, is a company called New Japan Pro Wrestling. I will probably refer to it as NJPW, going forward. And Kenny Omega is a wrestler from Canada, and he was in the US and Canada working the indies for quite a long time, so just very small indie wrestling. But he had aspirations to go to Japan, because all of the wrestling that he watched and liked was Japanese wrestling. All the games that he loved were Japanese. He's a very big nerd. So he went to Japan and really made a name for himself there. He is an incredible athlete, and we'll get into it. But Kenny became this really popular figure in Japan, and he had some of his friends with him, Matt and Nick Jackson. They're known as a tag team called the Young Bucks. And in 2016, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, they formed a group called the Elite. And it was the top tier of NJPW's probably biggest faction, called the Bullet Club, which is a stable of cocky foreign heels that have absolutely no respect for any of the traditions of Japanese wrestling. So they don't care about the fighting spirit, they don't care about honor, they'll cheat to win, and that is the antithesis of Japanese wrestling. So the Bullet Club is it's kind of like the Yakuza. It's kind of a Yakuza thing, but they're all foreigners. There are hardly any Japanese wrestlers in the Bullet Club. So Kenny became the leader of the Bullet Club, and Matt and Nick were kind of his right hand men. He became this villainous character called the Cleaner, and it got over huge in Japan, absolutely. Mostly because it was silly. It was fun, but it was never it was very character based, kind of something that the Japanese audience had never really seen before. Because, some of the Japanese wrestlers are just very much, this is wrestling. I'm a wrestler, I do my moves. But Kenny always thought about wrestling differently. He thinks about it as stories and not necessarily just wrestling. I actually listened to Kenny talk at length yesterday about how he views his wrestling matches as episodes of Batman the Animated Series. He wants to tell a story in the amount, you have 20 minutes or 25 minutes, however long you have, and he wants to tell a story, a complete story in that amount of time. If you were entertained in the match, Kenny's that's what I want to do. I want you to be able to take a match and show it to someone who has never watched wrestling before ever, and for them to be entertained by it and walk away and say, hey, that was cool, or hey, I really liked that. He's I could give a shit less about wrestling, about the wrestling, that's part of it, but it's not all of it. So he kind of had this really different sensibility, and the Bucks had it as well, about what they wanted to do with wrestling, and it resonated with the Japanese audience. They started a vlog on YouTube that was called Being the Elite, and it really just started out as Matt and Nick filming their travels from Japan back home and wherever else they'd wrestle, and that's really what it started as. But it became something much more creative as they started adding more people in. So the Bullet Club had additional members come in, and one of them was Cody Rhodes, who was a former WWE superstar, and he's actually Dusty Rhodes' son, as I kind of briefly talked about. And they came together in 2017, and they all began kind of pouring their creative energy into Being the Elite, and they made it like kind of this back matter canon to like everything that was happening in the NJPW storylines and like Ring of Honor, which was another place that they were wrestling. And it became this like funny sketch comedy skit show where they would like do like things in kayfabe. So kayfabe is like the canon of wrestling. It's like the fiction of wrestling. Like Kenny had somebody murdered on Being the Elite once. Like, it just became this, like, very funny, like, fun thing that they just did every week, and it kind of, like, was adjacent to everything going on in the wrestling stories, and it got massively popular. Like, absolutely massively popular. And it kind of became, like, a viral hit, and so much so that they saw more people attending the shows, like both in Japan and the US, because they had like got into it via Being the Elite. So in 2018, the Elites, the core group of the Elites' popularity grew so much that they were able to put together like an independent wrestling show that they called All In, and it sold like 100,000 tickets. I don't know that. It's not 100,000. Wow. I can't read numbers. 11,000 tickets on its first day. So it sold out the venue in Chicago, and basically everybody said like, oh, you're not going to be able to do this. Like, you can't, like, WWE can only get numbers like that. You can't do that. You're just like indie wrestlers, really. But no, they like sold out the arena. They had a pay-per-view that they did by themselves. It's kind of like the Bullet Club pay-per-view. And like, they kind of surpassed all the expectations in the world, and you know, it attracted a lot of people. So like Tony Khan, who is I guess he's the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He owns a football team. He's a billionaire. He kind of like he was a huge wrestling fan all his life, but he kind of became enamored by this like runaway thing that was such a big hit. And he helps Kenny, Matt, Nick, and Cody make All Elite Wrestling. So they're executive vice presidents of All Elite Wrestling, which was kind of something they set out to, like, Kenny's motto's been for a long time, like, I want to change the wrestling world. I want to change the world. And he was able to kind of do that because now we have, like, another wrestling company that's kind of just as big as WWE and getting bigger, like coming into like a challenge, like for the first time ever. And it's just a wild occurrence of things that have happened. Like, let's make a funny vlog show, and it's like, oh, we have a wrestling company now.
I had no idea Kenny was like one of the people who created it. The only one I've ever had in my mind was Rhodes because of his hair. Mm-hmm. He reminds me of Spike from Buffy.
Yes, he does.
Wow. That is a really, like, the fact that this group went to Japan, like, it has become so big that they came back here and rivaled, like, one of the biggest corporations in, like, the entertainment world, which is just incredible because things need competition. But, so, not everyone is a wrestling fan, or they are, but they don't know about it. So before we get into talking about the match that we're going to watch, would you mind just rattling off a couple wrestling terms for the listeners who might be interested in wrestling, just to help them get into it?
Sure. You're going to hear us talk and me talk specifically about a couple of things as we go through here. So the two big ones I think that you want to know, that you might just know colloquially, but maybe not, is heel and face. So the heel is traditionally a bad guy in wrestling. He's like the one you're supposed to root against, the one you're supposed to boo. He's not nice. They're not nice to the audience. They're not nice to other wrestlers. that's the heel. Heel behavior, rude behavior, mean behavior is something I'll probably say a lot as we go forward here. And on the other side, the face, the baby face, is the good guy. So it's the guy you're supposed to root for. Like, we love cheering the faces. They're here for us, the fans. They're like they can act kind of as like a fan, like perspective on things. Like, both of these terms, and I want to say like good, you'll hear a lot of people say today in 2020, heels and faces in wrestling don't exist anymore. I respectfully disagree. I think there's a lot of gray area now, which I think there should be in good storytelling, but the backbone, the root is always kind of there. I talked a little bit about kayfabe before. Kayfabe, as I mentioned previously, just a little bit, it is the fiction of wrestling. Like, so we have kayfabe, and then we have what's real. So in kayfabe, Kenny Omega is like, he is a kind of like a villain, like almost like a villainous, like anime guy. Like, he's kind of like an anime villain, but. So that's Kenny Omega, but in the real world, his name is Tyson Smith. There couldn't be those two things are different. So I always approach looking at wrestlers like actors. They're playing a role on TV. We can get, like, the cool thing about it is we get closer and further away sometimes from that line. And depending on what you like about wrestling, maybe you like it when it's like closer to real life. Maybe you like it when it's way out there, like Lake of Reincarnation,
aliens
type of Undertaker, like, is actually a dead guy. You know what I mean? Like, we get way over on the other side. There's enough ice cream for everybody. We don't all have to eat the same flavors, which is very important about wrestling and how I feel about it. Heat is one thing I'll also probably talk about in this match we're going to be watching. And heat is really just when the crowd, like, kind of gives a wrestler, usually a heel, a negative reaction. So when you're getting booed or you're doing something bad, like really intense moves to somebody else, like, it's kind of like, I'll say, oh, like, he's getting heat for that. It's because, like, somebody's doing something they probably shouldn't be doing. And I'll say work. So when you're getting worked, you're buying into the kayfabe of wrestling. So over the weekend, when I watched AEW's pay-per-view Full Gear, I was like crying because I was very much getting worked by the situation at hand. So, like, it's kind of like your suspension of disbelief. Like, if you watch a movie, right? Like, when you watch a movie, you're not like, oh man, like, why didn't this happen? Because you're buying into what the movie's selling you. It's the same thing with wrestling. Like, what I want people to kind of know is that wrestling is very much something you can view as like a TV show or a movie, and especially what the Elite does, because that's what they want to do with wrestling. They want you to be entertained the same way you would watching a movie or a television show. I think of it the same way, and I encourage a lot of other people to do the same thing if the words professional wrestling seem a little, like, strange to get into.
Yeah, so for me, it was like, for a while, I was like, oh, wrestling's fake and all that kind of stuff, and I never got into it. But watching this, I 100% was getting worked because, like, you can tell these stories and characters, and there's so many layers to everything that it follows the same vein of, like, not to, like, demean anything, like, it's like a soap opera. There's so much going on and different stories that are being told. Like, I think it's the main reason that a lot of people who are big comic book fans are also, it's very easy to get into wrestling because there's this universe with all these different characters interacting. They have different stories, different crossovers, and things like that. So, like, it's wild, but, like, if you're into that kind of stuff, it's going to be such an easy buy-in.
Oh yeah, and Kenny said in an interview, he said, when I was growing up, my dad asked me, what I wanted to be when I grew up, and he's like, well, I said, he's like, when I was 8, I said, oh, I either want to be a hockey player, like a hockey goalie, or I want to be a superhero. And Kenny's dad was like, well, what if you can't, like, what if you can't be a superhero? And he's like, well, no, that's what I want to be. So he found wrestling as this place that those two things could converge. Like, he could be an athlete, he could be like the sports, like hockey, like the sports thing, but then like also a superhero. Like, it's the one place where you could actually see people do amazing things that seem like they shouldn't be happening. And like all these characters, and it's really cool. Like, we talk about wrestling being fake, and the way any wrestling fan will tell you it's not fake, it's predetermined. Like, the matches are predetermined. And someone else said something that like kind of stuck with me. It's like, yeah, it's predetermined, but when you go to see, wrestling has more in common with theater than it does with basically anything else. So like, when you go to see a play or like a ballet or something like that, when you go to see Swan Lake, like, you're not saying like, oh, I know the outcome of Swan Lake, why should I watch it? You're watching it be performed by whoever's performing it. So some people perform it this way, some people perform it that way. There's a difference between your local theater troupe and like the Russian ballet, you know? Like, some people just do it better, and that's kind of how I think about like wrestling.
I'm really glad you said the ballet thing, because I was literally texting Mike that when I was telling him about the episode. I was like, it's like this beautiful dance that these people are doing. Like, this stuff is really dangerous, and if you weren't really good at it, you could die. Like, doing flips off these ropes and stuff, if you land on your neck, it's over. I was so enamored with this match. I watched it once, and then I started rewatching it earlier, and I don't do that. I'm not a rewatcher. I've talked about it before. I don't rewatch things. I'm just not good at it. I enjoyed it so much even the second time. So
it's incredible.
What would you say are some like the major themes of wrestling if people are trying to understand like what they're getting into?
So I think theme-wise in wrestling, there's a couple ones that I keep coming back to that are pretty universal in a lot of things. For me, the things I love about wrestling is very much a dramatic, like very much dramatic angst and emotion, kind of like an emotional, like very emotionally romantic. Like, and it can be between like two men or two ladies or anybody that's on screen. So I want to say like it's very emotional. Absolutely very, very emotional. And that can range anywhere between romance to catharsis, you know, to anger. Like, you can get all of that. Like you said, soap opera, you're not wrong. It's this very emotional thing. There are a lot of themes in, especially AEW, of found family. There's lots of stables in, when I say stables, I mean like a group of wrestlers, like I won't say a gang, but like a gang. There's lots of like friend groups, and how those friend groups like interact with each other and interact with other groups. There's lots of found family dynamics, kind of like the X-Men. Like, I think about the Elite as a found family because they're just like these group of people that came together and didn't have like, and then found one another in this weird circumstance and did this incredible thing. That's, to me, that's absolutely a found family theme. And one of the other things that I really, really like that I guess would be, I don't know if it's a theme, but like if you just like really getting excited about people doing flips, I can't think of a better thing to watch. Like, everybody's like, oh, I love backflips. And then you're like, well, wrestling has a fair amount of people doing backflips every week. And they're like, oh, I want to watch that because it's pro wrestling. I'm like, but you just said you like backflips. Like, what's the problem?
How often do backflips come out and like come up in your everyday conversations?
Mine, I mean, maybe not super often, but when I'm talking about wrestling, I'm usually talking about the stories. I'm not talking about the moves. We'll talk about it when we get into it, but I view the moves and the wrestling in general. So if you're looking at like wrestling like an ice cream sundae, like the story and the characters are like the ice cream, so it's the base of your sundae. And then the wrestling and the moves are like the whipped cream and the sprinkles and the cherry. Like, it is, like, it's great. Like, I love backflips. But that's all kind of secondary, because your match should really be your vector for telling the story. It shouldn't be the moves that are the story. It should be, like, the moves are kind of facilitating the story you're telling. So that's kind of how I think about it. But, like, I don't talk about backflips often. I wish I could do one. I can't.
And honestly, from someone who wasn't really, you talk about it a lot, and, like, I love hearing you talk about stuff, but I was never into wrestling. But, like, after this, I get it. So, like, people, you may like wrestling if you're into those shared universes, those like dynamics, those stories that, like, tension, like larger than life dynamics and stories. It's just it's very unique. But, like, if you're looking for something to get into that is long term and weekly, this is the place to be. Also, it comes out on Wednesdays, like comics, which totally a parallel. Where can people watch AEW?
So AEW is on TNT, Turner Network Television, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Fun fact, if you tune in earlier than 8, you will usually see a bad film. TNT has some notoriously bad programming when it's not Bones or Supernatural or AEW. So if you'd like to watch those, like, London Has Fallen movie series, or anything like with Liam Neeson in it, you can catch that before AEW Dynamite. Just fair warning, I always laugh because we always tune in a little early, and it's usually the tail end of a movie that we've seen too many times, and it's also bad. But you can watch AEW on TNT at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday night. And it is never not on. It has been a constant throughout the pandemic. It has been my shining light, because it's always something I can invest in, and it's always there for me.
Well, that's good. And then I know they replay everything on the TNT app as well. Mm-hmm. So, what match are we watching today, Charlie?
All right. So, fun fact, before everything happened so much all the time, I went to AEW's pay-per-view Revolution at the end of February, and I saw an incredible tag team match live. And the match we are watching is Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team Championships.
And if you were looking to watch that, you will just need to find the pay-per-view. Was it Revolution? Mm-hmm. And check that out. It is well worth the price. It is, how long is it? Like 2 hours?
It is. Actually, Revolution was probably about 4.
Yep. So you're getting everything that your money is worth. So with that, we will take a break, go watch it, and come back and listen to us talk about it. This was incredible. Like, it was just like pageantry and, like, the costumes. So Hangman Adam Page wasn't wearing much. No. But the Young Bucks have these outlandish, like, frilly Macho Man type outfits, but it's just like a jean jacket and jeans. Mm-hmm. And a very specific studded belt that Adam at one point is yanking on as he's beating the crap out of the one with the long hair.
Yes. It's cool because the Young Bucks always wanted to be like that kind of outlandish look to them because everybody and the brother was wearing like just like trunks and black kick pads and boots. So they wanted to be different, and they kind of took inspiration from people like the Macho Man and like Shawn Michaels. So they have these incredible outfits, but it's also highly obnoxious, which is absolutely a key.
Yeah, it is obnoxious, but I love it.
It was great.
I thoroughly enjoyed this match. I think that my favorite thing was the fact that it opens with kind of like a whole backstory. Like, so someone that is new to this could be like, oh, this is why this match is so emotional, because they're fighting their best friends. Like the tag team, each side of the tag team is just like this group who's been together for like forever, and now they're fighting for the championship, like for the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. It is, there's always usually a little intro package, and this match is like unique because it's the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, who are a tag team and always have been, versus their best friends, Kenny Omega and Adam Page, known as Hangman, who have never been a tag team and kind of lucked into this situation where they're just like kind of together, and they won the tag team championships. And in the background of all of that, between like that whole conflict going on, Hangman is he sees himself as the least member of the Elite. He sees himself as the least successful member, the least skilled. Like, he's this guy who is with these incredible like athletes who have all these accolades, but his own self-destructive behaviors, his anxiety, his depression, and his enjoyment of alcoholic beverages kind of pushes him into this very isolated spot where he is now lashing out against his friends, the Young Bucks. He tried to leave the Elite, but because the Bucks are very confrontational and have a lot of pride, they wouldn't allow him to leave. So that has caused problems. And then you have Kenny Omega, who is best friends with Matt and Nick, and he's got this tag team partner who he's found success with finally. And he's trying to play he's trying to placate everybody, but he kind of can't. And there's this incredible moment in the video package, and that happened in a match, where at the end, Matt grabs one of Kenny's arms and Hangman grabs the other, and they're like pulling him, like, and it's like they're fighting over a toy. And it, like, that was like, when I saw that happen live, I'm like, oh my God.
The whole thing was like extremely supercharged. Like it started pretty tame. Like, I was like, okay, this is not super exciting. But then Adam spit on
Matt. Yeah, it's Matt. Yeah.
And like, that's just like utter disrespect. Like, and then from there it just goes 0 to 100 for the entire match.
Yeah, it's there's some really bad blood there, and it's only bad blood because Matt is absolutely the angry brother, which you probably also saw during this match. Like, Matt is the one with the sideburns. It's hard to tell the Bucks apart sometimes. They're not twins as much as they might look like it, but Matt has this temper, and he's let it kind of get the best of him up until this point. And when Hangman spits on him, it is like, it's done. Like, they're done. Like, they were done. The pleasantries go out the window. And the funny thing about this match is, like, kind of the theme of it is like, how far is too far when you're fighting your friends? And I'm thrilled that you got super engaged with it, because I kind of like, I was like, oh, maybe there's like too much going on here, like, that you can't pick up on. But it kind of like speaks for itself, and that's what a good wrestling match should do.
Yeah, like, it didn't need all the extra, like, it was just fighting. There was no like ladders, there's no steel cage, no like any of the gimmicks. It's just like, the thing that was driving this is the story, and like the fact that these, like, I, even not having a pass with it, like, I felt that connection and the tension between everyone.
It's the thing about tag team wrestling also is, like, you have these like really dramatic moments between like your pet tag team partner and like it's the people across the ring from you, so you can like do a lot of like really like very emotional things. And in this, like Kenny, like you can see in the beginning, like Kenny is kind of like, you know, Kenny and Nick are in the ring initially, and then, you know, they're doing their thing. They're kind of trying to out wrestle each other, and then they break apart and they do, I think they do a fist bump or a handshake, and then that's when Nick goes to tag Matt in, Kenny goes to tag Adam in, and that's when Adam spits in Matt's face. Yeah. So it's no longer like it's not what it once was. And Kenny for the longest time in the match is trying to like kind of like, okay, we're not gonna go outside, we're not gonna do mean things, and the thing about it is it just kind of breaks down from there. Yeah,
like he at one point he's like pulling his arm, telling him to calm down, but then it just like nothing slows down. I think like towards the beginning, there's a part where they're both just slapping Matt Jackson back and forth. Just kind of like a pinball, like hitting him back and forth. I was like, wow, that sucks. But then like the whole tag team nature of it, it may be Kenny who is one point running at the ropes and they both kick him and he falls over the ropes.
Yeah. It's Kenny has this move, and it's showboaty, but it's called the Rise of the Terminator. Yeah. So he gets down in the middle of the ring, which you saw him do, and he puts his fists on the mat, and then everybody in the audience starts to go like the Terminator. And then what he'll do is he'll run against the ropes, and usually he'll jump over the top rope, he'll like soar over the top rope. It's like this crazy thing. But Matt and Nick know he does that so much that they just kicked him in the face.
Yeah, the dynamic that both groups knew how the other one fought was so cool and so well done because of that. Because the announcers, who also helped carry matches like you wouldn't believe, but like they were like, yeah, they know what the other one's going to do. So it's kind of not like fighting yourself, but it's like fighting your best friends. So they know your moves. Like you have to think outside the box and play. You have to play dirty. You have to.
Yeah, like, and to go on with the announcers, like, Excalibur, one of the announcers on the headset, like, continually hammers home, like, Matt and Nick and Kenny and Adam spent more time with each other in Japan than their families. And, like, Adam knows about how bad Matt's back is. So there's a part of the match where Adam just targets it. He just kicks it and like it elbows it. It's like, so Matt's got this like lingering back injury and Adam knows exactly how to get him. And, you know, just what I mentioned the Rise of the Terminator, like Matt and Nick have seen Kenny do the Rise of the Terminator so many times. Like, and it's like, you can't not see it coming because it's very flashy, but they're like, see ya. Sorry. So they just go for it. Yeah, so that's also part of the story, is like they know what everybody's going to be doing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Like they were talking about how like they would, because Matt's back was bad, they would like draw him baths and stuff. Like it didn't sound silly when they were telling this story. It was like, these guys are just family. Like, and the fact that this is happening, he really did a number to his back. Like he was pulling on his belt and just like punching him like in the lower back. I was like, oh, that doesn't look fun.
No, in fact, it looks very, very bad. And you know, it gets to the point where like the refs got to like kind of step in and say, hey, you know, what's going on here? And, you know, it becomes like almost like a show of like, okay, who can outdo who and who's going to make a mistake? Because if we know what everybody's doing, then, you know, what's going to cause the error. And I think they say as much on commentary, maybe unforced errors that like determine the winner or loser here.
Yeah, there's like, also I had a question. Pile drivers, weren't they illegal? Like, couldn't you not do them? What's the move you can't do? Okay, so elite, like banned in WWE and banned are two different things. So I mean, a pile driver is In general, that's the move where like someone gets you up and they like spike you down into the mat with your head kind of like between their legs. It can be very dangerous because like
if you do it wrong, your neck gets compacted. And there have been famous wrestlers, Stone Cold Steve Austin being one of them, who have gotten their neck broken by somebody botching a pile driver.
And you go to sleep forever. Like,
you don't wake up. But if you do them safely and you know how to do them, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. But there are a lot of things that this don't fly in WWE. Excuse me, because they're the company that they are. Like, they're just like, I mean, and it's not bad. I will never say that if you feel uncomfortable doing a pile driver, you should do one because it's good for business. If you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. Like, that's the wrestling thing. Like, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't even try. Like, because that's how somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, like, I'm not about to, like, pile drive somebody. Yeah, like, once I'm, like, there, I'll do it. But yeah, they're like, the moves themselves are wild, and I know you know the names, but I do not. The one where I think Kenny flips off backwards off of the pole. What's the pole in the corner? Is that a rope?
Just the corner, the turnbuckle. The turnbuckle.
The turnbuckle. He's on top of it, and he does I don't remember if it's him or Adam that does a backflip onto both the Young Bucks.
Yeah, that was Adam. Adam does when you see the backflip like that, it's called a moonsault. So yeah, Adam does the moonsault, and the crazy thing about Adam Page is that he is this very hard-hitting cowboy. Like, he looks like he could just grind you down into the dirt because that's what his moves kind of do. Like, he's very, very brawly. He's a very brawly cowboy, but he can also do these other things, like a moonsault, like a backflip from the top rope. That's kind of what really makes him special, is that he's got this, like, heavyweight, like, moveset, but he can do these light heavyweight things, like all the flips and stuff.
Yeah, it was intense. Like, the thing I really, like, after watching this, I, like, kick myself for saying the whole it's fake thing. The predetermined thing I heard somebody say the other day. But, like, those moves are super dangerous. And, like, they looked well pulled off.
Yeah, these four know each other so well that they are, it's just an amazing, like, testament to, like, how much they trust each other, too. There are a couple things that get me in this match every time. It's Hangman's moonsault to the outside that you mentioned. Nick, the longer brother, he has an incredible hot tag at one point in the match where, like, Matt tags him in, and Nick will basically just do a sequence of moves. He'll do, like, super kick, and then he'll, like, run on the side of the apron and, like, do a kick, and then he does a face buster over the top rope when he says "suck it," and I'm a big fan of that. And then he'll flip back over the rope backwards to hit his opponent, the other guy on the outside. Nick Jackson sometimes he just astonishes me with the things that he does. But it's all an incredible sequence. And everybody kind of, like, knows you got to know where to be. You got to know how to get somebody. You got to know all of that, and it gets me every time.
Like, at a couple of points, I think and maybe both today, but Adam and Kenny, like, double teamed one of them. Like, one took him from the top and one took him from the bottom and slammed him. I don't know what that's called. Kind of like a like a tower. What's the thing where you have a bunch of different? Not a tiki.
Like a totem pole.
Yes, like a totem pole. They nailed him to the mat, and I was like, "Ow!"
Yep, bumps are real. The bumps are real.
Yeah, I wrote locomotion suplexes. Oh yeah, when I think it's one of the Young Bucks. I think it's
Matt. It's Matt Jackson.
Matt. He's, like, doing a locomotion of suplexes outside of the ring on the ramp, and the ramp is, like, metal, and he's just, like, slamming him over and over. And he almost got him into a pile driver there too. Was it?
He did do it. Yeah, he did do it. When I was there live, like, the Bucks are wrestling heel in this match. like they're the guys that have had the attitude problems. They're the people that like say really nasty things to Adam for like no reason. And the cool thing about the story is like Adam is kind of like, he's not really been the bad guy, but he's got all these self-destructive behaviors, and you can kind of see like, oh, like if I was friends with that guy, like maybe I'd have an issue with him too. But at the end of the day, like all Adam really needs is his friends, but Matt and Nick are too proud to like reach out and ask Adam if he actually needs help. So like that pile driver on the ramp when I was there everybody just erupted into boos because they get Adam up on the ramp and like Matt's holding him for the pile driver, and Nick gets up on the ropes and the pile driver is called the Indie Taker, and they just spike Hangman down on the ramp, and it's a chorus of boos, like just a chorus of boos, because it's so mean, it's like so nasty, and it's like that point they're gonna just do what they can do, like not only to get the belts, but they're punishing Adam at this point.
Yeah, the back and forth between them was so incredible the entire match, and there were so many times where it's like, oh, is this going to be it? Are they going to pin him? Like, are they going to pin him? Like, and they keep breaking out, but it doesn't feel like the match is. It never felt like the match was dragging. It felt like when they broke out, you're like, oh yeah, now they're going to keep going. What else were some of your thoughts? I think I've.
There are a couple things that happen in this match that are incredibly like powerful to me as somebody who's like, the cool thing about it is, like, and there's lots of cool things, but this match in particular, and any match that probably has Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks in it, or even just Kenny Omega, is it's there for people to watch it and be enthralled for the first time they're seeing it. But if you've been following the story of Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks or the Elite, there are all these little like nuggets in there, like I don't want to say Easter eggs because like, but they kind of are, that like you're getting rewarded for paying attention, basically. Like, oh, like it's like a thing in the comments, like a callback, like, oh, I love that. Like, I remember when like they're referencing this thing, and there's a lot of things in the end of this match that do that. So like after that pile driver on the ramp, like Matt and Nick take their attention to Kenny, and it's hard to watch because Kenny and Matt and Nick have been like, they are the core of the Elite, like they have been together for a long time, and Matt is just decimating Kenny because like at this point all he cares about is winning the belts, and Kenny's shoulder is all messed up, like, so like they're targeting that, and the thing, Kenny has this Kenny's bi. Like, so he's like this, it's like really cool to have a queer wrestler. And like Kenny's had this really long running story in New Japan with his like tag team partner named Kota Ibushi, who is, you know, besides being his tag team partner, is basically the love of his life, and who he had to leave in Japan to come back and do this AEW thing. And their tag team finisher is called the Golden Trigger. So Kota Ibushi is the Golden Star. One of Kenny's moves is called the V Trigger. So like the Golden Trigger was their finisher as a tag team. Their tag team's called the Golden Lovers. And Matt and Nick get Kenny on his knees, and they do the Golden Trigger to him. Like, and that's so mean. Like, it's like so salt in the wounds, but it's very satisfying when they do the Golden Trigger and they cover Kenny and he kicks out at one because he's so pissed off. Like, he's just like, I can't believe you did that. Like, but he's fired up, and the crowd like pops big for it. And it's like, oh, like that's incredible. But it, you know, if you don't know the history of that move with Kenny, then you just think it's like, oh, Kenny's like really fired up. But if you know it, like, it's like, oh, how fucking dirty are those boys? Like, why are they doing this? Like, that really grabbed me. And like the really big thing that grabbed me in this match was Adam actually, like, because Kenny can't hit his finishing move. Like, the story at the end of the match starts to become Kenny's shoulder is too bad and he can't actually get somebody up on his shoulders for his finishing move, which is called the One-Winged Angel, for reasons that if it sounds like you know why, it's because so he can't actually get somebody up to do it, and he tries, but he can't. So Adam has to do it for him. And so when Adam like hits the One-Winged Angel, that's an incredible moment, but it gets broken up. The pin gets broken up, so that's not the end of the match. And then finally, Adam gets the buckshot lariat where he does this like sweet flip over the ropes and does a clothesline, like takes Matt's head off, basically. And then that ends the match. And, you know, there's a lot of tension at the end of the match because it's like, I don't know, like, do I want to shake hands with you? Like, you just put me through hell, especially Kenny. And I think Adam's really disheartened when Kenny still decides he wants to like go over and shake Matt and Nick's hand, like after everything. And it's just, yeah, it's a whole lot.
So the shoulder thing, I didn't know the move. So now that makes a lot more sense to me with the one-winged angel, who I thought was Seth Rollins.
Seth Rollins and Kenny Omega have some things in common. Let's just say that.
So the probably Matt Jackson, when he's punching Kenny's shoulder, he's holding the tape. Mm-hmm. So as someone who's been in the fitness industry for years, like that tape, I see it all the time with different people. And like he's holding it, and like me, I never would have looked at that tape and been like, oh, it's so sad. But it's kind of like looking at what they've done, and they're like, oh, this is our friend.
Yeah, that's another moment like where Nick has to stop Matt from ripping the tape off, and then the tape is in Matt's hand, and he looks at it like, oh.
Yeah, and that could have been goofy, but it wasn't. Like, they sold it so well.
Yeah.
And I did have one final note that I really wanted to bring up, and you commented on it earlier. And it's the quote of the entire match for me is, put a little extra sauce on those ribs. I was dumb. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what? And then you told me this announcer actually has barbecue sauce.
Yes. Jim Ross and his barbecue sauce, absolutely.
It was incredible. Put a little extra sauce on those ribs. I was like, excuse me? He's like pulling him up on the turnbuckle, and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, that's when Kenny teases the one-winged angel from the top rope, which it's terrifying to think about. But yeah, no, JR does that a lot, like, and it's very funny.
The announcers are hilarious, but they also drive the story, because at one point, I think it's maybe Kenny or I don't remember, two people are yelling at each other, but we can't hear them. Mm-hmm. But the announcers are like filling in the story that we can't get. So I really loved this, and I hope people who listen to the episode actually give AEW a chance and find something new that they love.
Yeah, I'm sad to say that even though Kenny and Adam have triumphed in this moment that we have witnessed, Adam has not been having a good time. He has lost his tag team partner and his tag team championship.
Yikes.
And he is on being the elite last Monday, the Monday after Adam lost his match to Kenny for the number one contendership for the AEW championship. Kenny and the Bucks were like spraying sparkling grape juice all over themselves in the EVP office. And the shot is Adam walking up to the EVP office and standing there while they sing "We Are the Champions." And Adam just stands on the outside of the room.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah. And then he walks away and he goes to the bar, and, I'm not gonna swear a whole lot. I don't know how much I can swear here, but it was a very sad moment. He pours himself a drink, and like there's a cult in AEW. There's like a goofy cult in AEW,
sure,
like as characters, and they kind of have a rivalry with Hangman, and they were like mocking him before he showed up, and like they were like saying F Hangman, F Hangman, and he walks up to the bar, and they all stop, and he grabs a drink. And then he grabs the bottle, and then he goes up to them, and he says, F Hangman, F, like he's self-deprecatingly doing this, and then they start cheering, and he says it so loud that it makes them uncomfortable, and they stop, and then he walks off. It's so sad.
That is
like,
wow.
Hangman's so compelling of a character, and I'm very sad that he's gone through all of this, but when he wins that championship, ooh man, it's going to be good.
Well, I'm very thankful for you coming on. where can people find you and your show?
You can find me, Charlie, at Genetic Ghost on Twitter, where I'm mostly talking about Kenny Omega. Mostly. Also wrestling, also comics. You can find my work. I do writing at XavierFiles.com, I think, where I write about comics and a lot of other things. Dan does things there too. It's fun. You can find my podcast at Match Club Pod on Twitter. We are just wrapping up a 3-part episode series about Kenny Omega and Okada's very epic and storied rivalry in New Japan. So if you want to learn about the cleaner, come listen to the podcast. My partner Mikey is also fantastic, and you can find him at quantum ... on Twitter as well.
And I'm Dan. You can find us at Gatecrashers Pod on Twitter and Gatecrashers Pod on Instagram. I said that. I don't know why I elongated that. Like, I knew it was fact, but I like. But yeah, you can. You can find us there. Hopefully, we'll have a website very, very soon. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm very happy to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for watching, Dan. I'm so glad that you enjoyed, and I hope anybody that wants to check it out also enjoys. I think there's a ice cream flavor in AEW for everybody.
I thought you were going to say they had ice cream, and I was like, oh, the WWE has that. I hope they get their own.
I hope that I want AEW to have their own ice cream bars. I'd buy up Kenny Omega ice cream right now.
All right. I will see you again next week.
Gatecrashers.